Welcome to the Ableton and Music Habits Podcast, episode 53.
Welcome to the Ableton and Music Habits Podcast, actionable music production tips to take your music to the next level. And now, your host, Jason Timothy.
Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast. This one's going to be about the ebb and flow of creative productivity. And this is a really common theme among those in the creative arts because it can really be frustrating when you lose energy that you feel like you should have, where you had it yesterday, but today is just not there. And your circumstances really haven't changed all that much, if at all. Sometimes you've got the exact same circumstances and you still, one day, you just don't have it, and another day you do. And although this can be frustrating, it is totally normal part of the creative process. See, creativity is not a constant state, but rather a cycle that ebbs and flows. For example, people tend to be more creative at certain times of the day, with some people being more productive in the morning, others finding their peak creativity in the afternoon or evening. This is kind of similar to longer cycles. Like many of us have a daily cycle, we've also got a weekly and a monthly cycle as well, where you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. So by being aware of this, you can learn to manage it and kind of manage the types of tasks that you're going to do. In other words, there's some tasks that can be kind of more menial and don't require a whole lot of mental energy. And then there's other tasks that really require that mental energy and deeper thinking. And it's that deeper thinking that really gets us in trouble. See, when we're fatigued, it's much harder to make decisions, and we get what's called decision fatigue, which just means that choosing from one thing or another requires a certain amount of mental energy that we just don't feel like we have. So it's much more difficult to make a decision, and if we can't make decisions, then we can't move forward in a project. This could definitely happen when we're not focused and we're multitasking on several things at the same time, or if we're working longer periods of time without taking breaks. Just keep in mind that the more difficult the problem, the more mental energy it's going to require to solve. And until you've solved this problem over and over and over, it's going to be something that requires your mental energy. The benefit of repeated action is when things become habits, they no longer really require that same mental energy. And they almost get pushed to a part of the brain that handles menial tasks, things that they don't really even have to think much about. That's why a lot of producers who've been working for many years doing the same sorts of things can work really, really quickly, because what they're doing most of the time doesn't require that same mental energy. So one of my suggestions is to take little breaks often instead of going really long periods. Even if you feel a certain amount of energy, I still like to do the 25 minutes working and then a 5-minute break. And then I can recommit myself after I've taken a little mental break. I find that in most situations, this works really, really well. Other times when you feel more energy, you could try 50 minutes of work and 10-minute breaks. The point of this is that you don't want to make your work stressful. And if it requires a lot of thinking, it tends to be more stressful. So you kind of want to relax your way into it. And when you know that you got a break coming up, that can actually help push you through as well. Obviously, any distractions that you have, your notifications, loud noises, personal issues, stresses, things like that, are also going to take away some of this mental energy that you have. So it's really important that you guard your space when you're trying to be productive. And although there's certain things that you can't avoid, there are a lot of things that you can prepare for ahead of time. And by doing this, you could probably remove like 80% of the distractions that would normally stop you. Because once you're distracted, it takes a good amount of time to get back into that zone, get back into that flow. And that's really the goal. If we can get into that flow, then our mental energy will kind of go into automatic mode, where it doesn't require as much energy because everything's just kind of coming to you. Another thing to keep in mind is that creativity is not always a linear process. Inspiration can strike at any time, and it's not uncommon for people to have breakthroughs or moments of inspiration at random times, even if that's not the time that they've set aside to be creative. What I do find, though, is by setting a time consistently, your brain will tend to start opening up more during those times because it knows that this is the time to release some of that creativity. But even with that, sometimes you're just going to have these sparks of inspiration that come at weird times. And that's totally normal. And the goal is to be able to capture that spark, even if you don't have the time to sit down and do the work, because those sparks will give you direction and energy that you normally don't have sit down to create. These are little sparks of inspiration that you can't expect, but when they happen, you want to take advantage of them because it kind of gives you a boost of mental energy. Another thing we want to avoid is overwhelm. And it can be very overwhelming if we set goals that are too big, that we don't know how to break down. So it's much better to give yourself goals that are so simple that you can't help but finish them without a whole lot of effort. And then you could just stack up these mini goals, and each time you complete one of these little mini micro goals, it'll give you momentum for the next goal and the next goal. I also recommend that you try to stop your work before you get fatigued. Then you're going to come back to it feeling the same way. So something to really keep in mind is you want to stop when you're ahead. Next, there's organization. And I've talked about this in other podcasts and posts and things like that. But it's really important that you have a system with your DAW and in your studio where everything's as streamlined as possible. So when you have an idea, you can immediately get it down instead of having to hunt for it. You don't want to be hunting through hundreds of plugins or VSTs or trying to find that one perfect sample. It's best to have all that ready to go. And you have these kits or presets that you're most commonly going to want to use. Organization alone can 3 or 4x your productivity in the same amount of time without depleting your mental energy. Lastly, make sure to take care of yourself. Self-care is something that so many artists underestimate. But if you really want to be productive consistently, you need to get enough sleep. You need to be eating a relatively healthy diet. And you want to find ways to manage your stress, like journaling and meditation and other things like that. It's important that you find what works for you. But all of these pieces of the puzzle will keep you from getting fatigued in the middle of projects. And if you're in this for the long run, then this is something that you're going to need to manage. Because if you're not careful, you will hit those mental blocks and then you'll get into writer's block, and it's going to be very, very difficult to climb your way out of that. So build the habit of really taking care of your mental energy, and it will take care of you creatively. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you do, please subscribe to the podcast and share this with your fellow music producers. You can also follow me on Instagram by searching Ableton Music Habits or Ableton_music_habits. If you'd like to connect with me more directly, you can fill out a quick form at musicsoftwaretraining.com/application. And we'll tackle your current challenges as well as giving you your best next steps to take your music to the next level. Take care and see you guys next time.